there's a reason the word narcissist feels inadequate to describe certain people. Because what survivors are often encountering doesn't feel like just personality. It feels predatory, hollow, invasive. And that's where shamanic traditions introduce a word most psychology avoids: Wetiko. Not as a metaphor, but as a state of consciousness. What Wetiko actually is, beyond the surface definition. I'm going to go into that. In many Indigenous traditions, Wetiko isn't a demon in the Hollywood sense. It's a mind virus, a predatory orientation of consciousness that feeds on power, control, domination, emotional energy, innocence, attention. Wetiko cannot generate life force of its own. It consumes it. And here's the key distinction most people miss. Wetiko doesn't begin as evil. It begins as unmet terror. So how does this relate to narcissism? Well, this is where things get uncomfortable. Psychology frames narcissism as a personality structure, an attachment adaptation, a defense against shame. And all of that is true, but it's incomplete. From a shamanic lens, pathological narcissism looks like Wetiko, expressed through a human psyche, not metaphorically, functionally. So let's break that down. Which comes first, trauma or Wetiko? Almost always trauma, hands down. No infant is born predatory, but some children grow up in environments where empathy was unsafe, vulnerability led to annihilation, attunement was absent or weaponized, love was conditional or humiliating. In those conditions, the psyche fragments. And when fragmentation becomes severe enough, consciousness reorganizes around survival at any cost. This is the doorway. Wetiko doesn't possess the child. It enters through the absence of relational safety. The moment something changes, there is often a point, early childhood or adolescence, where the psyche makes an unconscious decision: I will never feel this powerless again. And from that moment forward, empathy becomes a liability. Intimacy becomes a threat. And other people simply become resources. This is not a moral failure. It is a collapse into defensive consciousness. But over time, something else happens. When defense becomes identity in narcissistic structures, the false self is not a mask. It becomes the entire operating system. The inner world goes offline. Shame is exiled. Grief is buried. Remorse is inaccessible. And this is where Wetiko becomes more than trauma, because Wetiko feeds on disconnection. The more the individual disconnects from their own humanity, the more that they rely on admiration, superiority, control, emotional extraction. At this stage, the pattern sustains itself. So let's answer the question, are narcissists fully possessed? This is the question everyone wants a simple yes or no answer to. And the real answer is harder. Some are partially overtaken. Some are deeply entangled. Some are almost entirely identified with Wetiko consciousness. Possession in shamanic terms does not mean an evil entity jumped inside them. It means the ego has lost sovereignty to a predatory survival structure. And here's the part survivors feel but are told to not say out loud. Some individuals no longer have access to conscience. Not because they are actively choosing cruelty, but because the circuitry for empathy has collapsed under years of dissociation, entitlement, and reinforcement. So the question remains, can Wetiko be healed? This is where I'm very careful and very honest. Healing requires recognition, humility, grief, accountability, surrender of the false self. And Wetiko cannot survive those conditions. But here's the truth most survivors discover the hard way. Wetiko does not seek healing. It seeks supply, which is why narcissistic personalities rarely sustain real transformation unless there is a total collapse of their existing identity. I'm talking rock bottom exposure, loss of control, full-blown existential crisis. And even then, healing is not guaranteed. Let's discuss why survivors feel drained or emptied. If you've been close to someone with strong Wetiko expression, you may notice some of the following things: brain fog, exhaustion, self-doubt, loss of vitality, confusion about what's real. That's not imagination. Wetiko feeds on attention and emotional charge. Your nervous system knew something your mind tried to rationalize. The most important distinction is that not everyone with narcissistic traits is Wetiko dominated, and not every traumatized person becomes predatory. The difference is orientation. Trauma can turn inward or it can turn outward. One leads to collapse, the other leads to consumption. So in closing, let's understand that Wetiko is not about demonizing people. It's about naming patterns that thrive in silence. It's about why empathy doesn't reach certain individuals. Boundaries are the only medicine, and compassion without discernment becomes self-harm. This is about reclaiming your own sovereignty, because Wetiko cannot attach to somebody who is embodied, self-attuned, holds boundaries, refuses to abandon themselves, Your healing isn't just personal, it's protective. I'm Kat Grace. Thank you for being here with me. I hope this helped. I'll see you in the next video.